This program is sponsored by the Monroe Township Patrons of the Arts in collaboration with the Monroe Township Cultural Arts Commission, chaired by Maria Nalmick. Grant funding has been provided by Middlesex County Board of Chosen Freeholders through a grant award from the Middlesex County Cultural and Arts Trust Fund. Boheme Opera New Jersey would also like to thank the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, Department of State, the Boheme Opera Guild, and Princeton Friends of Opera for their continued support during these trying times. We would also like to thank Nancy Gunkelman, our liaison with the Monroe Township Patrons of the Arts and Cultural Arts Commission, and both Leah Wagner and Stephen Rubes of the Monroe Township Library for the technical support that is making this broadcast possible. Now I would like to introduce our performers. Pianist and Managing Director of Boheme Opera New Jersey, Sandra Pucciatti. Soprano, Eve Edwards. Eve, if you're there, wave hello. There she is. Mezzo soprano, Eva Kastner-Puschl. Eva, wave hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
And director, she is also, besides singer, one of the reasons we love having her on this particular show is she is from Austria, and who better to sing this music. She is also the Director of Business Administration of the Princeton Festival. And finally, we have a young gentleman by the name of Vinnie Beck, who is both a music student and emerging artist at Rider University, and we think you'll enjoy him very much. So at this point, we'll get started with our show. The last time, if you recall, we introduced the form of music known as operetta as a form that stood between the dramatic verismo operas of the late 1800s and opera buffa, the comic opera that by this time had gotten a little silly. And so there was created this form of music theater called operetta, where you had arias that were sung. The plot was moved along by spoken dialogue. And in this case, the music tended to be in waltz format.
I know the guy that does the narration.
So now what we're going to talk about a little bit is the people who wrote this music. And our first composer, Johann Strauss II, the son of the Waltz King, Johann Strauss, and his most famous operetta was called Die Fledermaus. And in this story, you have the complications that arise when the rich banker Eisenstein, his wife Rosalinda, and their maid Adele all attend a party given by the Russian Prince Orlovsky, and they do it in disguise so that the others don't know they're there. Rosalinda passes herself off as a Hungarian countess, and we will now hear Eve Edwards sing the Countess's song of her supposed homeland, the Shardash.
Voice of my homeland, nostalgic and calling, I hear you calling.
Despite the fact that Johann Strauss the Elder had made such a name and such a fortune for himself, he did not want his son to become a composer and to avoid the rigors of a musical life. In fact, he wanted his son Johann the Younger to be a banker. And so he was sent to school to study finance, and he was stuck there until Johann Sr. abandoned the family for his mistress. And so finally, Johann II was able to pursue his love of music. He would compose 15 major operettas, including the Fledermaus. And what you're going to hear now, since we're at Prince Orlovsky's party, is Prince Orlovsky with Eva Kastner-Puschl singing the role of Orlovsky, welcoming everybody to the party and telling them to enjoy themselves according to their own taste.
Ich lade gern mir Gäste ein, man lebt bei mir recht fein, man unterhält sich wie man mag, oft bis zum hellen Tag. Zwar langweile ich mich stets dabei, davon noch treibt und spricht. und schenke Glas um Glas ich ein, dat ich nicht widerspruch. Nicht leiden kann ich's, wenn sie schreien, ich will nicht hab genug. Wer mir beim Trinken nicht pariert, sich ziert wie ein Tropf, dem werfe ich ganz ungeniert die Flasche an den Kopf. Dem werfe ich ganz ungeniert die Flasche an den Kopf. Und fragen Sie, ich bitte, warum ich das denn tue? Warum ich das denn tue? Sie ist mal bei mir so Sünde, Chaka so go. Sie ist mal bei mir so Sünde, Chaka so go.
It should be noted that among serious opera composers, there was a tendency to look down their nose at this music for the masses. But there's an interesting story that appears in both Strauss's and Brahms' biography. And that is that at a party, Strauss's wife Adele approached Brahms with the customary request to autograph her fan. It was usual for composers to write a few bars of their music and then sign. Brahms wrote a few measures of the Blue Danube and then wrote beneath it, unfortunately, not by Johannes Brahms. The next composer we're going to talk about is one who came to America by the name of, we're going to stay in Austria with Franz Lehár. And Franz Lehár, in a sense, was the opposite of Johann Strauss, but actually, in a way, the same. Franz's father was also in music, but he wasn't famous. He was a rather pedestrian bandmaster, and young Franz followed in his father's footsteps, came to Vienna, and became a conductor at the Vienna Theater in 1902 and started composing. His most famous operetta is The Merry Widow in 1905. The story centers around an ambassador of a small country who tries to keep its richest citizen, a young widow, Hannah, from marrying a foreigner. While she was young and poor, she had a torrid affair with Prince Danilo, now an attaché in the embassy, whose task it is to ward off the money-hungry hordes. Well, the number that we're going to hear centers around a cafe that everyone used to gather at, just as in La Boheme, everyone gathers at Café Momus. Here in Merry Widow, everyone gathered at Maxime's. And so we're going to hear Vinnie Beck sing Going to Maxime's.
The talent of an attaché, I have applied to get ahead. Each government communique, I stick into the files unread. 'Twill never do to overdo. A little time one must keep free. I go to work at 2:30 and have been known to stay till 3 until I get a healthy raise. Official parties I better ways to entertain the foreign guest. When bored with waiting on the grate, with kissing hands and rubbing brows, the dull routine I delegate, and go to join the leisure class. The darkened boulevards invite a man to stroll into the night, to float upon the winding streams that carries you to shame and extreme. I saunter out to sea, the high life of Paris, those jewels of the nation, of spicy reputation. Do my gosh, Gigi, lulu, fra, fifi, the girls who gather nightly for camaraderie, the darlings of my dreams assemble at Maxime's, those captivating creatures put down by prudes and preachers. Do my gosh, Gigi, lulu, fra, fifi, whom natives term politely café society.
At this time, we start with composers who were born overseas and then came to the United States, where they composed their most famous works. The first one we're going to talk about is Sigmund Romberg, who was born in Hungary, but was sent off to study engineering in Vienna. And just like Strauss decided that, well, engineering isn't for me. And so he started studying composition and harmony. He came to the United States in 1909, started playing piano in cafes, and went on to his own orchestra and was hired by the Schubert brothers in 1914 to play for their shows in New York. His most famous musical theater shows include Maytime, The Student Prince, Desert Song, and The New Moon. We're going to hear our first duet with Eve Edwards and Vinnie Beck, a song from Maytime, Will You Remember Me?
Love is so sweet in the springtime, when blossoms are fragrant in May.
No ears that the coming can bring, time to make me forget this day.
I love you in life's great December.
The same as I love you today. My heart ever young will remember the thrill it knew.
That day sweet heart, sweet heart, sweet heart, will you love me ever?
Will you remember this day when we were happy in May? My dearest one, sweet
those of you who tuned in for the first show know that I talked about the impact that the introduction of technology had on the popularity of musical theater, not only in the United States, but around the world. At this time, we were in the first or second decade of recorded sound. The big company in the United States was the Victor Talking Machine Company. And even though they had started producing most of their records on the Victor single-side Red Seal classical records, which some of you may have remembered from your grandmothers, and popular songs of the parlor type variety, it's astounding that even as early as 1914, when you look at the original Victor catalog, which I have right here, you will find that there are no less than 72 operas and operettas that they encouraged you to buy records from. The usual suspects are there, including 4 operettas from Gilbert and Sullivan and most of the favorite opera category. But there is one that I would bring to your attention because it lit the spark that would change Broadway forever. And that was a show written by a 29-year-old American. He's the first among the 72 shows that are listed in the book that was written by someone actually born here, even though he studied overseas. This gentleman was very convinced of his own musical talent, even while he was studying in Paris. Of course, the gentleman I'm talking about who would go on to such fame was Jerome Kern. The show that he wrote, which appeared as a brand new show in 1914, was a show called The Girl from Utah. It's ironic that to this day, the show became very famous and catapulted him, and yet there was only one song that still remains from that show that even now, 106 years later, is actually in the standard songbook repertoire. Appropriately enough, that song is called They'll Never Believe Me. Going back to our program today, we're going to hear about Kurt Weill. Kurt Weill was born in Germany. His father was a cantor. He started writing music at age 13 and studied with the composer Busoni, and was best known for his Three-Penny Opera in 1928. His works were very critical of the Nazi regime and all they stood for, and so he was forced to flee for his life and came to the United States in 1932. He started writing music for American theater and film, and his 1943 work, One Touch of Venus, was written by Ogden Nash. They actually made a film of it in 1948 starring Ava Gardner and Dick Haymes. The plot is actually a very familiar one in both stage and opera. A long-lost, priceless statue of the goddess Venus is on display in a New York art museum. Rodney Hatch places the engagement ring he plans to give to his fiancée on the statue's finger. The statue comes to life and falls in love with Rodney, and all kinds of comedic complications ensue. And so we're going to hear Eva once again sing the song I'm a Stranger Here Myself from One Touch of Venus.
Tell me, is love still a popular suggestion, or merely a when it's shamefully obvious I do. Does love embarrass him, or does it bore him? I'm only waiting for my cue. I'm a stranger here myself. I dream of a day, of a gay warm day, with my face between his hands. Have I missed a long path? Have I gone astray? Ask, and no one understands. Love me or leave me, that seems to be the question. I don't know which tactics to use. But if I should offer a personal suggestion, how could I possibly refuse when I'm a stranger here myself? Please tell a stranger, my curiosity goaded, is there really any danger that love is not known? I'm interested especially in knowing why you wasted. True romance is so fleshy, but what have you replaced it? What is your latest foible? Is Jim Ruby more exquisite? Is being more enjoyable? For heaven's sake, what is it? I can't believe that love has lost its glamour, that passion is really passé. If gender is just a term in grammar, how can I ever find my way, since I'm a stranger here myself? How can he ignore my available condition, my these Victorian views? You see before you a woman with a mission. I must discover the key to his ignition, and then, if I should make a diplomatic proposition, how could I possibly refuse when I'm a stranger here myself?
We now come to a composer that was born in the Czech Republic, Rudolf Frimmel. He was born in Prague, studied composition with Dvorak, accompanied violinist Jak Kubelik in 1901, moved to the United States in 1906. And he came with the support of world-famous opera singer Emmy Destin. He made his piano debut in 1904 at Carnegie Hall, where he premiered his piano concerto in B major. He took over from Victor Herbert on the operetta The Firefly in 1912 and went on to write 17 more operettas, the most famous of which is going to be the one that we hear something from today, Rose Marie, which was written in 1924. The duet that you're about to hear, Indian Love Call, is probably the most mocked and piece of music that's made fun of more than anything else that I can imagine. Everything from basset hounds baying in the background to Looney Tune cartoons. And I tell everybody that once you stop laughing, and it's okay to laugh, but once you stop laughing, just listen to the music and you'll see really how beautiful it is. And so now I present Eve and Vinnie once again sending Indian Love Call from Rosemarie. What you just heard made Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald the musical couple of the 30s. We'll hear another of their songs later on and from a different show. At this time, we return to a show written by Sigmund Romberg. The show is called New Moon. It was written in 1928. It's a historical set piece, and it involves a setting in the French Revolution in 1792. Robert is a young French aristocrat whose revolutionary inclinations force him to flee France. He winds up as a servant to Monsieur Bunot in New Orleans. He has fallen in love with Marianne, Bunot's daughter, but can't reveal his true identity because he would be captured by the French detective Vicomte Ribard. Ribard finally tracks him down and puts him on a ship named the New Moon to be returned to France. Meanwhile, Marianne contrives to be a passenger on the ship, and after a mutiny by the crew, Robert and the crew settle on the Isle of Pines and start a new republic. Marianne at first rejects Robert, but after Robert again tracks him down, the French commander reveals that there has been a revolution in France, and all the aristocrats must renounce their titles or be put to death. Ribard refuses and is taken away. Robert happily renounces his title, and he and Marianne rejoice and are able to marry. And from that show, we're going to hear Vinnie Beck sing the song, One Kiss.
In this year of 1792, our conventions have been thrown askew, and I know I'm out of date when I seek one mate, one faithful lover true. To be really in the fashion today, you must have a dozen beaux in your sway, but somehow I don't believe in that modern plan. I want to wait for just one man. One kiss, one man to save it for. One love for him alone. One word, one vow, and nothing more. One magic night within his arms, where passions whirl unfurl, and all my life I'll love only one man, and no other man in the one kiss, one man to save it for, one love for him alone, one word, one vow, and nothing more to tell him I am his own. Within his arms, where passions whirl unfurl, and all my life I'll love only one man, and no other man in the
It seems that every opera has a drinking song, and operetta is no different. Johann Strauss wrote a song in 1852 to be performed outdoors in the summer at one of his favorite beer and wine garden parties. And so he dedicated the song to all the Annas and Ninas who brighten up the establishment. And now Eva Kastner-Puschl is going to sing for us words that were put to the polka later, known as the Annen polka.
Mir ist auf einmal so eigen zumute, irgendwas prickelt und kitzelt im Blute. Irgendetwas trägt mich weit weg in die Himmelsseligkeit. Und ich muss lachen, vor Glück muss ich lachen, auch hab ich Lust, etwas Dummes zu machen. Was könnte das sein? Schwipsel sein? Doch es ist kein Schwips, oh nein. Vorhin trank ich noch aus einem Glas, jetzt trink ich aus zwei. Wie kommt denn das? Und dann denk ich noch, wenn ich nur wüsst, hab ich heute schon geküsst. Nein, irgendwas ist mir so eigen zumute, irgendwas prickelt und kitzelt im Blute. Irgendetwas trägt mich weit weg in die Himmelsseligkeit. Und ich muss lachen, vor Glück muss ich lachen, auch hab ich Lust, etwas Dummes zu machen. Was könnte das sein? Schwipsel sein? Doch es ist kein Schwips, oh nein. Hopsasa, lala. Oh, ich weiß, was ich weiß. Alles steht schifferrot, alles dreht sich im Kreis. Alles, was fest war, ich merke schon, das ist nicht mehr verlässlich, es tanzt mir davon. Und wenn ich gehen will, dann schwimm ich leicht, bis ich endlich das Ziel, das ich will, habe erreicht. Mir ist auf einmal so eigen zumute, irgendwas prickelt und kitzelt im Blute. Irgendetwas trägt mich weit weg in die Himmelsseligkeit. Und ich muss lachen, auch hab ich Lust, etwas Dummes zu machen. Was könnte das sein? Schwipsel sein? Doch es ist kein Schwips, oh nein.
At this time, we'd like to just give you a few notices of what's coming up with Boheme Opera online. Again, we're truly sorry that we're not able to give you these programs live in front of you. But in this COVID era, we're all trying to do our best with virtual performances. And so we bring your attention to our Boheme Opera New Jersey website, where you can hear a number of podcasts and shows known as Who's Afraid of Opera. We just posted another one up within the last few days. Our music director, Joe Pucciatti, narrates those and gives you examples and clips from various stage productions that Boheme Opera has done in the past and looks forward to in the future. I would also call your attention especially to the two more remaining shows of this series, the first of which will occur next Wednesday at this time, called Unique Broadway, which will focus on the music of Leonard Bernstein, Harnick and Bach, namely Fiddler on the Roof, Marilyn and Alan Bergman and Michel Legrand, the film Yentl, and also music from Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis. Finally, to finish up on a grand note, on Wednesday, December the 16th, we will have our show called Classic Broadway, which will feature the music from the shows written by Rodgers and Hammerstein and Lerner and Lowe. All of your favorites will be represented, so we hope you'll tune in then. The last composer that we're going to talk about today is actually the one who really brought Viennese musical theater to the United States, and that was Victor Herbert. He was born in Dublin, trained in Germany, and was engaged to a woman who was already an opera singer, and her name was Teresa Forster. She was recruited by Frank Damrosch, who heard her in Stuttgart when he was actually going there to hear a tenor that he didn't particularly care for. Well, Teresa Forster had an unusual request. She would only come to America and sing for Damrosch if, in fact, he would hire her fiancé, who was a cello player, young Victor Herbert. And so, after Damrosch heard him play, Victor Herbert came on the boat to America, where he and Teresa got married. And so, as he got to America, he basically then started to write for the musical theater. And his most famous show was the 1910 production of a show called Naughty Marietta. It was set in New Orleans, and the character Dick Warrington was commissioned to capture and unmask the notorious French pirate who was helped by a high-spirited runaway, Marietta. And the song we're going to hear, the duet, again, one of the most famous in the operetta repertoire, appearing in a 1935 film starring Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald. We close with Eve Edwards and Vinnie Beck singing Ah, Sweet Mystery of Life.
Ah, sweet mystery of life, at last I found thee. Oh, I know at last the secret of it all. Of a longing, seeking,
Let's give a round of applause to all our performers, Eve Edwards, Eva Kastner-Puschl, Vinnie Beck, and of course on the piano, Sandra Pucciatti. Again, we hope to see you the next week. The shows will come very quickly, in fact, 1 week apart. Hopefully you enjoyed this show. Please tell all your friends. We're pleased with the turnout today. And I hope you'll all be healthy and safe. And so thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
That's great. Wonderful. Very important.